Good evening, everyone. To acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which the Australian campuses of Macquarie University are situated, I'd like to invite Senior Darug Man, Lex Dad, to perform the welcome to country this evening. Lex.
Dr Andrew's a lot taller than me. Budgeringini, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, my name's Lex. I'm from the Kanamakau people over in Prospect, and today we meet on the Watamatical country, part of the Darug Nation. I'd like to thank Macquarie University for inviting me here once again to perform the Welcome to Country. And I'd like to start off with, I'd like to pay respects to my elders, both past and present. I'd like to pay respects to Muka, the Sky Father, and Ganiti Kun, Mother Earth. Because without Mother Earth, we don't have anything. Now, I'd also like to explain a welcome to country to people. Aboriginal people, we don't own the land, we belong to the land. And as I said, she's our mother, and we pay much respect to her. My borders of my country go right up to the top of the Blue Mountains, and I'll give you an example. Traditionally, if I wanted to cross over the top of the Blue Mountains and go into Wiradjuri country, I would have to seek permission. I'd have to go and sit on their borders and light a fire, and I'd send up smoke and wait to be approached by a traditional custodian. Sometimes I could be waiting up there for up to 2 weeks. Now, I could be passing through country to gather more stories for our people, to share important knowledge. And when I was welcomed into country, and normally a smoking ceremony would follow to cleanse me of any bad spirits or things that I might bring into their country, they would tell me the rules, what I was allowed to hunt, and certain other things and taboos that had to be respected on that country. So I always like to share for people, since European colonisation, everyone thinks they own the land, but we don't believe in owning the land. And I like to leave it with you to think about Mother and look after the land wherever you tread. And it's once quoted by a famous Aboriginal man, Archie Roach, "Be careful where you walk in this land, because a child may have been born here." So without further ado, I'd like to say Warami, Midiga, Darug Barunga. That is, welcome friends to Darug land. Didgerigor, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Lex. Not just a friend of Macquarie University, but in fact an integral part of Macquarie University. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Faculty of Arts and Macquarie University Art Gallery, I'd like to also welcome you all to the opening of tonight's exhibition, Arthur Wicks, Ahead of the Field. My name is Andrew Simpson, just checking there, and I'm the Director of the Museum Studies program here at Macquarie University. Now, we are absolutely spoiled rotten at this art gallery, ladies and gentlemen, with some exemplary and outstanding shows, and this one is an absolute cracker. This new exhibition, Arthur Wicks Ahead of the Field, provides a diverse yet concise insight into the significance of the work of artist Arthur Wicks. A key proponent of colour field painting in Australia, Arthur produced a vast repertoire of paintings, sculptures and screen prints that both reflected and engaged the socio-political and cultural landscape of the 1960s. Anybody here remember the 1960s? There's a few people owning up. Very good. Yes, Leonard's owned up to it. Fantastic. His combination of hard-edged abstraction with mechanical reproduction produced a unique visual language which reflected the new aesthetics and politics of that time. These works, brought together this evening, are exhibited for the first time in over 40 years. See, by coming to art gallery openings, you actually become part of Australian art history. It's very exciting. Arthur, of course, is present at tonight's launch, and I both welcome him and congratulate him on behalf of Macquarie University for this visually enriching and stunning and intellectually engaging exhibition. It really is quite a feast for the eyes and the mind. Now, it gets even better tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because to officially open the exhibition, we have with us Dr David Hansen. David is the Senior Researcher and Specialist in Australian and International Art of Sotheby's, Australia. During his long career, Dr Hansen has curated or managed over 80 exhibitions, including such landmark projects as John Glover and the Colonial Picturesque in 2003, the 5th Australian Sculpture Triennial in 1993, and The Face of Australia in 1988. He's published essays, articles and reviews in books, journals, magazines and newspapers. For 25 years, David's been a public gallery director and curator. He's worked with the Warrnambool Art Gallery, the Riddoch Art Gallery, Mount Gambier, the Australian Sculpture Triennial in Melbourne, and the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery in Hobart. All this before undertaking his current position with Sotheby's. So would you please join me in giving a very loud and very warm Macquarie University Art Gallery welcome to Dr David Hansen.
Not loud enough. Thank you, Andrew. I like coming to Sydney. In Sydney, time stands still. It might be because it's the first site of the British occupation. Well, all those marine chronometers and long case clocks and gentlemen's pocket watches that were unloaded in January 1788 mark the meeting of dream time and machine time. Whatever the case, whatever the cause, the fourth dimension here always seems to be thicker but more transparent, a more variable medium. I experienced it in coming here today. It was from Melbourne 5.5 hours door to door, including a cancelled flight and then a second one deferred and then a holding pattern for 3.5 hours over Sydney Airport. You're all familiar with that, aren't you? It's evident that standing still of Sydney time, the variability of Sydney time, is evident in the competition for tonight's art audience. I'm sure some of you will be going after this to the Hunters Hill Town Hall, where the exhibition is The Romantics, featuring Raymond Ward Thompson's Paris street scenes, Ian Hansen's sailing ship seascapes, and John Perkins' 17th century Spanish-style still lifes. And it can be seen at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which recently launched its vision and fundraising campaign for the second digital decade of the postmodern 21st century under the rubric Sydney Modern, just before opening an exhibition entitled Sydney Moderns, which was centred on the art of the 1920s and 1930s. The flexibility of time was evident within that show too. I noticed that there were a good number of Frank Hinders from the 1950s. And it was explained to me that the reason they were included was because they reprised themes from his late 1930s work. What I'm leading to, I suppose, in this incoherent and roundabout way is the notion that time, as abstraction, as metaphor, has multiple dimensions and manifestations. It is, to borrow from Stephen Jay Gould's book title, both arrow and cycle. And that's because this radical temporal uncertainty, or plain old anachronism, is all around us tonight. Primarily in the person of the 238-year-old artist, Arthur Wicks, and in the works in the show. Some of them dusty, battered, cobwebbed old canvases retrieved from out the shed and under the bed, variously tidied up and revivified. Others of them complete reconstructions of now deceased works, brand new early paintings. The title of the exhibition, Ahead of the Field, which was, I understand, suggested by Roger Butler, the Senior Curator of Works on Paper at the National Gallery of Australia, alludes, of course, to the great landmark exhibition of geometric abstraction, which was the opening show at the National Gallery of Victoria's new building in 1968. So that title, Ahead of the Field, casts Arthur in the role of pioneer and prophet. Who wouldn't like that? And I am the first to recognise and to salute his cutting, hard edginess. The work from the mid to late 1960s, made in Australia and in France, defines that shift in Australian painting from dark, romantic, splashy, tactile, expressive matter pictures, which were all the go in the 1950s and early 60s, to the smooth, cool, flat, decoratively ironic or ironically decorative forms of abstraction. So yes, temporally speaking, Arthur is an arrow guy. But he is also within a cycle. I was interested to learn in interviewing him for this show, something I didn't know previously, that he was in fact taught by Frank Hinder. And Frank Hinder, previously mentioned, the dynamic symmetry of whose work can be seen in faint echo around these walls, took his dynamic symmetry from a visit to America in the late 1920s. And America it was that had such a profound influence on Arthur's work through the 1967 exhibition, 2 Decades of American Painting. Round and around it goes. So if we look, for example, at the full-speed prints and at Gemini 2, with their insistent circles, we immediately think of Sid Ball's Cantos, 1962, 64, and Alan Leach-Jones's slightly later circles, the Numenons. Before that, there are Jasper Johns' Targets of the mid-1950s and Kenneth Nolan's slightly later colour wheels. Or we could go way back to Robert Delaunay's Premier Disque of 1912 and even Kazimir Maliewicz's slightly later Black Circle 1. The thing is that the temporal priority doesn't really matter. Did Arthur's shaped canvases precede those of Tony McGillick? Did his repetitive right angles those of Cole Jordan? Wrong question. The right question is, what does the work of that period, that style, that mode signify? In terms of Arthur's work, I see those circle pictures as an essential prologue to his later, much later, mapping of the summer and winter solstice night skies. More generally, these paintings and prints, these objects, these painting objects, anticipate Arthur's preoccupation with geology and cosmology, with large and universal forces. Their combinations of angles and curves, flatness and bulge, are metaphors for the shape of the earth, the shape of Einsteinian space-time. For all their voguishly stylised flatness, they are full of notions of squeezing and slicing, of corners and cracks and interstices. Here we are again within the cycle. The work's emphasis on pressure, strain, physics makes me think of the artist a decade or so later standing crucified on the shore against an incoming tide, or lying naked in a crevasse on the San Andreas Fault in California, and again a decade after that, supervising the detonation of an artificial volcano in an abandoned limestone quarry in Mount Gambier. These are works of their time and of and for all time. They have something of the quality of that image that someone, I imagine it was Arthur, so cleverly placed on the back cover of the catalogue of tonight's exhibition. The photograph from one of the American lunar missions of this period. It's a great photograph. It's almost a Where's Wally for visitors to this exhibition. A spot the Wicks puzzle. If you look at that photograph, there they are in the slow in-curve of the lunar crater, in the spherical section of the lunar transporter's radar dish, in the convex mirror reflection of the helmet mask, and in the abstract stripes of the boot tread impressed forever in the lunar dust.
That's one small step for Arthur, one giant leap for Australian art.
With my warmest congratulations to Arthur and Rhonda and Leonard and the team, I have the very greatest of pleasure in declaring Arthur Wicks very much ahead of his time.
Thank you very much, David. That was absolutely fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Not only was it absolutely fantastic, but just listening to David, I myself now also feel full of interstices. But to say thank you on behalf of the Faculty of Arts and Macquarie University Art Gallery, I'd like to present you with this small token of our appreciation for you coming out and opening this terrific show this evening. Could you please thank David? And again. And also, David, thank you very much for the invitation to those other fascinating sounding art exhibitions that are going on tonight. I think I prefer to stay here, but ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you will stay for a little while longer. Tell all your friends and family about the show. It's a terrific show and a really, really exciting one. It'll be on till October the 9th. So bring as many people in to enjoy this important collection of work as soon as you can too. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening, folks.